This video is specially requested by Patreon supporter GWRzilla. If you want to get your video requests made right away as well, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/DaikaijuLegends. Alright everyone, welcome back to another KaijuVFX tutorial. Today we are doing a specially requested tutorial. We are going to be creating King Joe Black's cannon. And of course, let's see what the final product that we're making is going to look like. As always, I already have King Joe ready to go here. He is already raising up his arm. He's ready to shoot that cannon. So all we're going to do now is add in that gunfire effect. And I'm going to try and get the most amount of stuff done without using third-party plugins or stock footage elements, just so that you guys would be able to, make this on your own without any of the stuff that I've paid for. So first, we're going to create a new white solid. Click OK. And, we'll rename this gunfire. So we're going to disable the eye on that real quick, and we're going to take the mask tool, and we're going to draw sort of a muzzle flash by King Joe's cannon here. Just something like that. Like, it can look pretty cartoony. We're going to clean it up here soon. So we got that. Alright, next, we're going to go to the first frame that we want King Joe to fire his gun. Let's go right there maybe, and we will just trim that down right there. And let's zoom in right here so we can see clearly what we're doing. So next we're going to add a fractal noise effect to this white solid. And I'm going to switch the fractal type to dynamic progressive. That's my favorite. And we'll play around with the scale a little bit here, and the contrast we'll bring up, maybe bring down the brightness just a tad. And then we're going to set the blend mode of this to add. So we're kind of making that sort of energy gunfire. We can move this and adjust it however we want to make sure that it lines up with this aim. We'll feather that out a little bit. Alright, and what we can also do is we can play around with the offset turbulence a little bit, just to find something that we like in the fractal noise. A certain part that sticks out as looking like good gunfire. So I think something around that looks pretty good. So we'll just keep that right there. So next we're going to add a radial fast blur to this, and we're going to position this blur a bit behind the gun, but you want to keep it parallel to where he's aiming. And we can play around with the settings a little bit here. I usually like to mess around with the brightest settings, and let's keep playing around with that fractal noise actually. Find something a little bit better. Maybe we'll bring down the brightness a tad more. Just want to find something that looks like he's firing off the gun for the first frame. Maybe, that doesn't look too bad. We'll keep that for now. So next, I'm going to add I know I said I wasn't going to use third-party plugins, but this one's free, and I like it a lot, so you have no reason to get it, really. We're going to add VC color vibrance here, and we'll play around with the color to sort of that pinkish hue of King Joe Black's cannon. So now you can kind of see everything coming together here. So, as you can see, that's not doing a whole lot. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to move the duplicated layer one frame forward, and let's go there. And what we're going to do here is we're going to feather this frame of the gun out a little bit more, and we'll drag it forward a little bit. We're going to try and sort of create like a remnant of energy as the gun is being fired. So that the muzzle flash doesn't just pop in and then disappear. Like, it actually is moving along the environment by the force of the gun. So we'll do that, and then we'll also play around with the fractal noise a bit. Find something that looks a little more dissipated maybe. Also just to differentiate a little bit, just so it doesn't look the same as the first frame. That looks good. And then I like to do it one more time. Feather it out even more, just so you can barely see it. And we'll play around with the fractal noise again. Alright, so you see we're getting somewhere now. We're getting a little bit of gunfire action. One more frame of this fractal noise gun effect that we're going to do is actually going to, well, we're going to duplicate the first layer again, and we're going to delete that first mask and disable the layer, and we're going to come in here and draw sort of a little line around the muzzle of the gun. Something like that. Does not need to be perfect. So we're going to use this to kind of create the first frame, like right as the energy is nearing up to the cannon of the gun, like as it's about to pop out in full force. So let's play around again with the fractal noise until we find something that we like. I like that. That looks pretty good. Alright, you see we're getting somewhere now. Alright, now let's make this glow a little bit. So we'll add a glow effect to just this first one here while we figure out what we'd like the glow to look like. You know, maybe we'll change the blend mode of all these to screen and see how that looks instead. I like add better a little bit. So yeah, I mean, if you've messed around in After Effects, you've probably played around with glow. So I won't go too much into what I'm doing, but you know, just fine tune the settings until you find the amount of, you know, light spread and such that you would want to see on this kind of effect. Because really you can go as much or as little as you want. I like to go a little bit overboard and make those glows look pretty juicy. So I'll copy and paste those to all the others and keep playing around with them until I find something that suits my desires for each frame. So I'll be right back. Alright, that's where we're at now. So I want to add a little bit of a recoil to King Joe's gun. So I'm going to go to the first frame that the gun fires, actually, not the muzzle flash here, but like the first frame where it's actually in the air being fired. So I'm going to go into the King Joe base layer. This is just a pre-comp with all the stop motion in it. So I'm going to go into his arm here, this top arm layer, set a keyframe there. And because I stopped there in the composition, when I go into the pre-comp, we're automatically going to be on that frame. So what we do in here will affect King Joe in this composition. So I'm going to go forward a couple frames after the gun fires, maybe 3 or 4 or so, and rotate the gun going down a little bit, and then we'll have it come up a little slower at the end. Maybe we'll speed that up a little bit. Let's try rotating it up, and what we can also do is try animating the position a little bit. Might look a little cheap, but you know, just play around with it and see how it goes. You don't even need to do this. This is just something that I like to do. You know, let's see how that looks. You know, that's not too bad, honestly. Not the best, but it gets the job done. Alright, that's where we're at right now. So next what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a couple of spark particles to the gun firing, just so there's like a little bit of energy left behind when the gun fires. So we're going to create a new black solid, and we'll call this gun particles. And we're going to add a CC particle world effect. This is pre-installed with After Effects, so this is not a third-party plugin you need to pay for. You've seen me mess around with this a couple of times in previous videos. So we're going to go into all the settings here, the producer, the physics, the particle. Let's go ahead and get all of our stuff back and move the producer right to the muzzle. I'm going to keep the animation physics on explosive, but we're going to put the gravity at about 0.1 maybe 0.2, just so we have a little bit. And I'm going to bring this forward to right about there. And we're going to animate the birth rate. So we'll set a keyframe right after the gun finishes firing and it's starting to disperse. And we will go forward and set the birth rate to 0. Maybe we'll move that back just a frame. Alright. It's looking pretty decent so far. So we're going to go into the color map for the particles here, and I'm going to set the birth color to be sort of a very bright pink, almost a white, and then we'll set the death color to be maybe a little more purple and a much darker color. Just so the particles kind of fade out a little bit as they die. And we're going to set the blend mode of this layer to add, actually. You know, maybe I'm going to turn down the longevity of these particles. They're a little too long for my liking. So I don't like how fast these particles are fading out. So I'm going to go into the opacity map here. And I'm going to just draw sort of a little line like that. Something simple. Just so they fade out a little more over time. And maybe we'll make them last a little bit longer to complement that. Now we're getting somewhere. So I'm going to add a couple of effects to this just to make it look a little cooler. We're going to add a vector blur effect real quick, and we're going to change the type to perpendicular. And we'll turn that amount up just a little bit, maybe 42 or so. Then we'll duplicate that, and we'll set the type to natural, and we'll bring up the amount only a tiny bit, like 18 or so. Just so we get like kind of a cooler energy looking effect as opposed to just like lines coming out when he fires the gun. And you know, maybe I'll add a color vibrance effect to this as well. Make them that bright pink. Maybe we'll actually do that before all the blurs. That looks better. And then I'll add some glow effects. Just something simple. See how that looks? It's looking pretty decent. I'm going to turn down the amount of particles actually a little bit. Just because I don't like how many there are. So I prefer this to be a little bit more subtle. There we go. So we've got the cannon firing looking pretty good so far, I would say. Now the rest that I'm going to do is going to involve some third-party plugins and stock footage elements. So if you do not have those, you know, don't worry, this isn't necessary. This is just extra details that I like to add to this kind of effect to make it look a little bit more detailed and refined. So I'm going to take some muzzle flash elements from Action Essentials 2 from Video Copilot, and generally like any muzzle flash effect will work, but I want to find a muzzle flash effect that has some nice smoke remnants from after the gun is fired. So we'll bring a couple of these in and see if we find one that we like. That one looks pretty good actually. And so yeah, so we'll go to that first frame after the gun is done firing, and it's just smoke at that point. We'll add a glow effect just to bring it out a little bit more. And so let's bring this below all the particles and gunfire and stuff. And so that first frame that the gun is firing, I'm just going to put that effect there. So you see that? That already, it adds like a cool smoke effect after the gun is fired, like it was searing hot. And he just fired that gun like it was overheating or something. Just a very cool effect. So I'm going to play around a little bit here and maybe add a couple more muzzle flash smoke effects. Alright, that's looking pretty neat. We got King Joe firing his gun, leaving behind some smoke effects, kind of like he does in Ultra Galaxy, where you know, he fires the gun and there's just smoke everywhere. Obviously this is not the amount of smoke that there is in the show, but this is a nice little subtle touch to have to this effect. Next I'm going to add a shockwave element also from Video Copilot. Maybe 16 is a good one usually. So I'm going to get in there. I'm going to time stretch this down to about 25 just to make it go a little bit faster. Something like that. So I'm going to give this a VC. Well, actually no. First we're going to add a vector blur and just add add a little bit of perpendicular, kind of the same as the energy particles we did, and then add a little bit of natural. There we go. So now we'll add a VC color vibrance effect. You know the drill, make it pink. Set this to screen. I'm going to make this a 3D object just because King Joe is facing at a slight angle. So I'm going to turn that element to be a little bit toward the camera. You know, maybe we'll bring down the pink and maybe make it a little bit more purple. Something like that. Alright, so let's add a glow effect to this real quick. Just get some nice spread of the light in there. That looks pretty cool. Alright, lastly what I'm going to do is add a black solid above all this, and I'm going to add a optical flares from Video Copilot. And you know, you can use the normal lens flares that are found in After Effects, but you know, I love Video Copilot's optical flares. So let's do a cool flare, and we'll change the color of this to sort of a pinkish. I might have to go ahead and change a couple elements real quick. That looks good. Alright. We'll set the blend mode to screen. We'll keyframe the brightness and position actually, and we'll bring it to the front of the muzzle flash. And this first frame here where the gun's getting ready to fire, let's bring the flare right there, maybe make it just a little bright. Next frame, the gun is full force firing, bring it forward a little bit, make it pretty bright. Next frame, it's kind of dissipating a little bit, so we'll bring the brightness down quite a bit, maybe put it on the rim of that shockwave where a nice highlight is. Frame after that, maybe bring it up there to that highlight, bring it down just a little bit more, and then we'll end it after there. So that just adds a little bit more flair, haha, to this effect. Now something else that I'm going to do actually real quick is I'm going to add an adjustment layer and bring this below the lens flare but above everything else, and I'm going to have it start when the gun fires. I'm going to add a heat distortion effect from Video Copilot. So I'm going to add a little bit of like heat remnant after that gun fires. You know, there's smoke and like high energy particles that were just shot out. So it's going to be a little hot, I would say. So obviously we don't want the whole frame to be hot. So we're just going to draw a quick mask sort of around the area that the gun would have fired. And we'll feather that out a fair amount, maybe to about 200 or so. 176 works fine too. So then we'll play around with the keyframes for the distortion and heat amounts, and maybe over time we'll just bring them back down to 0. Alright, cool. See that? There's like a little heat distortion left behind. That looks really cool. And that like kind of ties the whole thing together, in my opinion. Just a nice little extra detail. And you know, there's other things that you can add, like distortion when the gun gets fired and light on King Joe himself when he fires the gun. But I think that's a good place to leave off this tutorial. It's getting a little bit longer already than I expected it to be, but I hope you guys enjoyed this little quick tutorial. I think this is a pretty cool effect, and you know, King Joe Black's pretty cool. So if you want to check out other kaiju related visual effects tutorials that I've done, be sure to check out all the KaijuVFX tutorials that I have in playlists on my channel. We've done a ton of stuff from Godzilla Atomic Breaths, quite a few of those, to some Specium Ray action, to some I-beams, all that kind of good stuff. So if you're interested in any of that, then be sure to check out the other tutorials. And if you have requests for KaijuVFX tutorials to be done in the future, be sure to leave them in the comments down below. I try to get to as many as I can otherwise, but Patreon requests like this take priority over those. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll catch you here next time with whatever it is that I have to offer. I would like to give a special thank you to Jimmy Moore, GWRzilla, Jeff King, and an extra special thank you to Ultriab for being Patreon supporters during this period. If you want to learn how you too can support this channel and earn some awesome rewards in the process, Be sure to visit patreon.com/DaikaijuLegends.